Penn State hit the road this weekend up to Columbus, Ohio, where they took on number 7 ranked Ohio State. The Nittany Lions split the series with a 4-3 win on Friday, followed by a 4-2 loss on Saturday. Penn State now has a record of 19-10-1 overall and 9-10-1 in the Big Ten. Welcome back to Penn State Sports Night. I'm Cailey Thalman alongside Kendall Skalicky and Josh Bartosik. Penn State was outshot in both games this weekend for just the third time this season. The only team that has managed to do this is Ohio State, and they did it twice in a row this weekend. The Nittany Lions also struggled on the man advantage, going 0-for-3 in both games this series, which has been a common theme for them all season. Let's take a further look at what happened this weekend. So Penn State was coming off a sweep against Michigan. They got swept in both games and didn't exactly have their best performance in that first one. They split the series last time against Ohio State and then again lost the second game in this series, which has been a common theme for them all year. Josh, what happened?
Well, I mean, yeah, you kind of mentioned it earlier in the in your opening bit, how Penn State, I think overall they actually played a really good series this weekend. I mean, I think a lot of people expected them to come in and get outworked because they kind of just blew it straight out. They flat out blew it against Michigan. They had a 3-goal lead in game 2 and just could not capitalize on that. But they came out, they've had a really strong game 1. You mentioned they were getting outshot in both of those games, but prior to that, Penn State was averaging like 41 shots a game and just could not find the back of the net. They finally did. They were turning defense into offense. It really worked. And really the only thing that went poorly in game 2 was their inability to crash their own net and really just, win the net front battles. And that's what Ohio State did well, and that's why they won. That's how both of their third period goals came to be. And I think really if you ask anybody, including probably Guy Godowski, they would say that they're pretty satisfied with their performance. I mean, going on the road in the Big Ten and getting a split when you're tied with the team for second in a hostile environment like Ohio State is a really good performance. So I think they're still happy with what they did.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think it was definitely a very physical and competitive weekend. And as you said, they are known this season for not doing so well in the Saturday games. But I think, as you said, they played really well on Saturday. It was not a bad night for them. However, I think the two deciding factors of that game were, one, I've said this so many times, but they were 0-for-3 on power plays Saturday, and this has been an issue all season long. They really need to figure out how to capitalize on these opportunities to win close games like this. And then the other thing was pulling Soulier with just under 3 minutes left. To me, that was a mistake. Ohio State scored very quickly. I thought that gave them way too much time to work with, and I think that might have cost them the game.
I totally agree with both of you there. I think getting outshot was huge, especially because that hasn't happened many times this season. They also were coming from behind a lot in that second game, which isn't like them. They usually score first, so I think that also may have contributed to that loss on Saturday. Kind of transitioning to the goalkeeper side of things, Soulier did not have his best weekend against Michigan and did not start on Friday against Ohio State. That meant Noah Grannon, the freshman, was in net and did a good job. He got them a win. Kendall, what did you think of his performance?
I thought he did great. I think it was huge for him to come out, and it's hard to not have time on the ice and then to come out like that against a team like Ohio State, and he had a great night, and I also think that gave Soulier the boost that he needed. And I was not surprised by the move to play Grannon on Friday because I feel like we've seen a trend with Godowski this season that he's not afraid to pull players to almost teach a lesson, I'd say. And I think he needed that, and he came out and recovered from the mess of the Michigan series. And Soulier, even though obviously they didn't win Saturday, he did not have a bad night.
Yeah, no, I have to agree. I mean, well, I was personally a little bit surprised, but I also, just myself, I know that there are a couple other people, but it's not necessarily bad to give your star goaltender a rest. I mean, look, Soulier has been doing pretty much all he can this season. I think the majority of the goals he gave up against Michigan were not really his fault. He had maybe 1 or 2 bad goals in game 2, but there's an entire team defense collapse in that series. But it did seem like he really needed the break, and I'm really proud of how Noah Grannon played. I mean, to be thrown into the fire like that, just your third ever collegiate start on the road against a Big Ten opponent, and you have 33 saves on 35 shots or however many it was. I mean, he was lights out. Still looked a little bit jumpy at times, but he made the big saves when he needed to. And I think that, like you mentioned, that really gave Soulier the boost he needed because he came out, played great, and I think he'll play great the rest of the season. But again, we saw that Noah Grannon can do it, so God forbid if something happens to Soulier or one of the goalies, that Noah Grannon can step up if need be.
Absolutely, and Ohio State is a really hard environment to play in. They've been huge at home all season, winning the vast majority of their games. So for Granite to come in and make those 32 stops was huge for the Nittany Lions. Now, speaking of moving forward, they've got a massive series against Minnesota this weekend. Minnesota has been phenomenal all year. They're topped the Big Ten standings, everything. They're the favorites going into the Big Ten tournament, and then you've got Wisconsin following that, which a sweep against Wisconsin should be expected at this point in the season, but you never know. What are you guys thinking heading into those final two series?
Well, I mean, look, there's really one simple plan that Penn State can have going into this Minnesota series, and it's to pick a religion and pray. I mean, but in all seriousness, there is virtually no chance that they can come away with a sweep. Maybe they can steal a game. They did it earlier in the season on the road against Minnesota, but this is a team that is really struggling with injuries right now. I mean, Ben Schoen's out for the year. Ryan Kerwin's still out. McMenamin's day-to-day. Jared Crespo got hurt in the last series as well. Paul DeNaples was banged up for a bit, too. And so Gagodowski was talking about it after Ohio, how this bye week comes at the perfect time for this team, right? I mean, they are so banged up. They could really use the extra rest and the extra mental rest as well to try and prepare for the best team as of now, and probably will be the best team for a while in college hockey. But if they go back to that really physical defensive style of play that they played against Michigan at home and at Pagula, and then the following week on the road against Minnesota, where they were able to get a win in both of those series, they might be able to get a point or something. Any sort of points really for Penn State would be massive. I mean, there's a four-way tie for second place right now in the Big Ten, and that home ice advantage in the Big Ten tournament is going to play a massive, massive role. So any sort of points would be welcome, obviously, but it's going to be a really, really tough task.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely going to be a tough weekend against Minnesota, but not impossible. I think the bye week is going to be super helpful for this team. They definitely need it. And also, we have to remember that they split at Minnesota away. So I think that them having the home rink advantage and having the war zone behind them is going to be helpful this weekend. I think if Souliere is on and their defense is in sync and the offense is playing their fast and aggressive game, that it'll definitely be a competitive weekend. And as I said earlier, they need to capitalize on those man-up opportunities. They absolutely must against teams like this, and I think it's definitely going to be an interesting weekend.
I absolutely agree with you. I think Souliere's performance is going to be huge in this upcoming series. His goaltending has got to be on point and unstoppable. And then another thing I think that's super important is special teams play. If they can stay out of the penalty box and actually finish on the power play, I think they do have a chance to come away with a couple points this weekend. With a huge series against Minnesota looming in 2 weeks, followed by a final series against Wisconsin and the Big Ten tournament in the near future, the Nittany Lions have to turn up the tempo to give them a chance in the postseason. For Kendall Skalicky and Josh Bartosik, I'm Cailey Thalman. Thanks for watching and have a great night.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night. We hope you liked that segment.
And we're sure there's other Penn State Sports Night segments that you are going to love as well. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.
And check us out on social media for updates and behind-the-scenes clips and pics. Follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action.
For all of us here at the Belisari Media Center, we are
Penn State Sports Night.